Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk. I'm Tracy Morgan. Great to have you along. Always love to have you with us at this time of the day. We get to take about 30 minutes and just chat. Now, if you're listening to us online, fabulous. Thank you so much. As you know, that is WISR680.com or InsideButlerCounty.com. If you're listening to us on the radio and you want that stream, those are the two different ways that you can hit us online. So again, thanks for listening to us on the radio or online or even with that new app that we have for you that's a free app for you. Let's Talk is a production of WISR 680 AM. So today is our day with Specialized Staffing, and normally we have Lisa Gard in, but we have Joey Lurchin today with Specialized. How are you?
Good morning, Tracy. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you. We've talked to you before, and it's nice to have you back, but explain what you specifically do for Specialized Staffing.
So with Specialized Staffing and Industry Recruiters, what I personally do is I'm a recruiter on the direct hire side, where my clients hire people directly onto their own payrolls from day one of employment, and I focus on positions that would be corporate functions, such as human resources, accounting and finance, marketing and sales, purchasing, those types of corporate functions that drive the operation.
Now, do you ever have individuals come in that want to change their career path? Is that a possibility to be able to work with somebody like you? Because I guess part of me feels like if I want to change my career path, I'm not experienced in those fields, except I have experience as an employee.
Sure. Yeah. No, that is actually a pretty common question that people come to us and ask us. And yes, it is possible to work with a recruiter if you're looking to transfer fields, but I will be honest, it needs to be in something where your skills can be somewhat transferable. So if it's a really drastic career change, I'm not sure with the requirements of the clients that you would be able to most successfully work with a recruiter. But
like if I wanted to be a chef versus a machinist, they're just completely
right. They might be
jobs.
so far away from one another that maybe those skills might not transfer. But there are definite areas where you may be able to transfer. You know, for instance, I'll take myself as an example. As a recruiter, if I wanted to then transfer into a human resources position, recruiting is part of that function, but it's not the full function that a generalist might perform in an HR field. But that would be a transferable field to go into because it easily relates to that.
And it's not that people can't change their careers altogether. It's just a matter of what you do.
Yeah, it's a matter of what we do.
Staffing. Yeah. Now, explain specialized staffing overall.
Sure. So overall, in addition to what I explained I focus on, we also have a staffing side where we are able to, with more of the local companies, assist them with any contract positions. You know, there are sometimes spikes in business. Companies aren't sure if they're going to last and sustain for a long time, and they kind of need people to fill in. They might need somebody to come in and cover a medical leave, a personal leave of absence. So regarding those jobs, if they're administrative in nature or accounting and finance in nature, or customer service, those types of positions we're able to help people on a contract basis with.
Now, I love the fact that you're here because being a recruiter, we can ask you all the questions and the ins and outs because you're sitting here today. But I'm wondering, why does it not cost me anything to work with you? And then is that perception still out there that a person feels like if I work with you, you're going to take a part of my cut. You're going to take a cut of my pay.
Right, absolutely. And that is a good question. It's something that I always address with everybody up front because there are a few recruiters out there. It's not normal anymore for most recruiters to take a fee from a candidate. Usually the clients are responsible for the fee. They're the ones asking for the service after all, so they're responsible for the fee. But in some cases, some recruiters, they do still charge a fee. Now, it might come in the form of a contract where, let's say, you accept a position with one of their clients' companies, and there's a certain guarantee period they have with that client. They may ask you to sign a contract that would then state that if you left within a certain period of time before that, you would owe them a certain amount of money back to the recruiter to compensate for that. So, recruiters can't be responsible for the retention completely at the business or your decisions that you may make to leave sooner than they would ever foresee that happening. So,
now, is that a part of specialized staffing, or does that depend on certain companies that come along?
Those are certain companies out there that may do that. I hear that from time to time from people that a recruiter may have asked that of them. That is not how we operate our company. There will never be a fee charged to any candidate that we work with. All of our fees are paid by our clients. So there's nothing ever coming out of their pay from us. Sometimes there's a misconception that I will be offered less as a candidate because the company's hiring through a recruiter. That is actually very false. You will receive the same amount of money that you would have in that position in any other normal circumstance, the same as you would working with a recruiter.
I love the idea of working with a recruiter, specialized staffing, of course, being in that industry, because it feels like I already have a step in the door by working with you? Because you've been in contact with these businesses for how long now?
Sure. We have relationships with most of our customers. Of course, we're always looking to do business with new companies that we can help find and hire the right people for them. But we are able to have that relationship with them. And speaking back to your earlier question, if it's a career transition, our clients feel comfortable with us typically. Whenever we are recommending somebody to them and we can explain why we're recommending that person to them for a position, even though maybe they're missing a couple of things that the company is looking for, if they are a really strong candidate and we're recommending them, we're doing it for a reason. And most of our clients then will interview those people, and oftentimes they are very, very surprised at what they find. They may have looked at that resume on their own and they didn't check off, every single box of requirements they were looking for, so they surpassed them. But in our case, we're able to kind of work with them and talk to them through those types of questions that they might have and encourage them to see them anyways.
Now, some companies may be used to working with you or organizations like yours, so they know what you're going to ask, they know what's coming. But what if we're a new business? What if we're just now getting into the aspect of trying to work with specialized staffing? As an organization, I'm now your client, I'm paying you to do this. What are you going to ask of me as the organization? What do you want to know to best help me?
As a company, I'm going to want to sit down with you, and I'm going to want to first learn about the position you have open. I'm going to want to talk about the particulars of what are the hard skills that you are looking for. What are the non-negotiables that you don't want to see anybody that does not have these types of skills? What are the negotiables where we'd love to have this, but we'd be willing to look at somebody without it if they had these things also. In addition to that, the soft skills. Those are really important. That's the reason why, beyond the hard skills and the ability to do the bullet-pointed responsibilities of a job, that's why somebody is going to last in your company for a long time. They're going to fit your environment, your culture. So coming in and visiting with a business allows us to get a first-hand in talking to those decision makers and also just being around in the company, kind of getting a feel for, what is this culture like? Who's going to really be able to stick here and last and get along with everybody and have the core behavioral competencies to fulfill those types of inherent things in the job?
When I was going through jobs, and I think we've all had many jobs, in our lives, but it took me the longest time to understand when somebody would say, what's the culture of your business? How would you explain that to somebody?
It's the environment, and then the behavioral side of it is also the qualities that you as a person need to have to fulfill the soft skills of the position. So when we talk about environment, we're just talking about, some businesses are a little bit more casual, some business are very, very professional, and there's an in-between there as well. It's how do people get along in that organization? What type of personalities seem to work very well in that business? And then on the behavioral side, take a sales and marketing person, for example. If you met somebody that was very quiet, they were introverted in nature, that probably isn't the right person from a behavioral standpoint for that type of a job. The behavioral qualities that would make somebody successful in that position would be the opposite. Somebody who's outgoing, who is very gregarious in a crowd of people, those types of qualities. So that's why it's important for us to get a feel for a business and what type of competencies from a behavioral standpoint and from an environmental standpoint, and then be able to assess those whenever we meet our candidates and interview them.
But there's a job for everyone, isn't there? I mean,
Absolutely.
Because if somebody is saying, well, I am that quiet person, I like my own space just because it helps me focus, I'm not social, there are jobs out there for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And do you deal with some of those positions?
Absolutely. You take, for instance, an accounting and finance individual. Those individuals, typically speaking, this isn't across the board. These are all, typically speaking, examples I'm giving. But that person would be a little bit more introverted in nature. They may more enjoy to crunch their numbers and be in an office by themselves with less interaction with groups of people. Now, that's not true across the board. You take a cost accountant, for example. A cost accountant has to have the ability to go out into a manufacturing plant. They need to be able to talk to the individuals that are working in different positions. They need to be very hands-on with those people and talkative with them. So that's a whole different personality, but still in the accounting and finance field.
If there's a company listening today and they're trying to decide whether to go with a recruiting firm, specialized staffing in particular, can you talk about the benefit of a time reduction, if you will, when it takes all of this time out of their day to find the right candidate?
Sure. I'm sure most people that have interviewed and hired for positions, if they don't have somebody supporting them, they realize how much time that takes out of their day. They're receiving all of these resumes from different ads they've posted, online advertisements, what have you. They're probably reaching out into their network to determine who is out there that I might want to consider for this position. And it's a lot of information coming in. It takes a long time to look at all of those resumes, to call those people initially to find out, are they interested and are they the right fit? Does it make sense for me to spend time with them beyond this phone call? To schedule those interviews and then to continue the interview process with actually bringing those people in, maybe more than once typically for their interview process. Also, the background checking, the drug screening, all of those things take time if you don't have somebody supporting you in doing them. So working with a recruiter who spends 100% of their time doing all of those things for you, really a huge time savings, because after all, that individual, that's not their primary role. They have a whole job to do beyond that position that they may be hiring.
So you're doing the background checks?
Yep, we do that as well.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it's based on companies and what their interests are. Some of them handle them on their own still because maybe they have an HR department set up. They like to follow their own internal process, but that's absolutely something that we can do for our clients as well, to just take one more thing off of them.
Yeah, it's a huge benefit as a company, because now I'm thinking I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know how to do that. I'm used to leading.
Right.
I don't know all the ins and
let me
outs of
do
that.
what I'm good at and let somebody else handle the other things. That takes, frees up my time.
So one more question. Will the companies be getting feedback from these potential employees as you're interviewing? You're the intermedium, if you will. You're that liaison, if you will.
Right, yeah.
Will the companies be getting some feedback?
They do, yes. I think that's a really critical part of the process. To be able to have a recruiter that you're working with enables you to get a critical point of view from the candidate's perspective. That's something that a solid recruiter should be sharing with you. The fact is that it's a competitive market. So you as the hiring manager need to also be selling your company, be selling your positions. And if there's information that somebody can help give you from a candidate's perspective that will help you specifically talk to the interests of that particular candidate to help do your job in that way, that's where a recruiter can come in to help you as well.
And so I guess I'm thinking as you're talking, being the liaison, if you will, what if we don't want to take the job? Are you the one to turn it down for us? Or how does that work if I just don't want to take that job that I got interviewed for?
You know what? That's something that we would absolutely be honest with our clients about. After every interview that one of my candidates has with one of my clients, I'm going to be talking to the client to debrief with them, and then also with my candidates to debrief with them. And I want candid perspectives from both sides of the fence. And if my candidate says to me, you know what? Honestly, on an interest level, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm like at a 5, and I just don't think that represents the next step in my career for these following reasons. My client's going to appreciate me telling them so that they're not spending more time with that individual and just wasting their time, and instead putting it on new individuals that might be a better fit and more interested in the position.
You know what? I've been asking you questions from the company's perspective. I want to flip it around to people like me who wants to come in off the street in Butler and try to work with you as a recruiter. But first, let's get your information out there for either side of the coin, if you will.
Sure. Specialized Staffing and Industry Recruiters. We are located here in the Butler County area. We're at 130 South Main Street, right in downtown Butler. Our phone number is 724-287-8380. And if you would like to talk with me directly, you can reach me at extension 228.
So if I'm a candidate, what should I be considering if I want to work with you as a recruiter?
Some of the things I think you should consider would be, when you're out talking to recruiters, I think one of the first things you might want to know is, are they working in my niche? So for instance, not only their profession, which maybe they're an accounting and finance individual, for example, does that firm specialize in those types of positions? Sometimes, even if they do, it might not be the majority of what that company does. So asking some deeper questions in terms of, if you had to percentage out where the majority of your placements are, what do you really specialize in? How many positions do you typically have on a regular basis that would fit kind of the scope of my experience? The other part of that niche might be industry. There are certain individuals that really want to stay in certain industries because that's really where their experience lies and they enjoy it. So let's take manufacturing manufacturing, for an instance. That is one particular industry that we specialize in. A candidate may be interested in staying in those industries. So it would also be a good question to ask on the industry end. I think the other thing that's really important is if you are a working candidate and you're passively keeping your eyes and ears open in the job market, confidentiality is probably of the utmost importance to you. Many times we get questions from candidates that they have worked with maybe a past recruiter who has sent their information out without asking them. They've not revealed the company name to them. They've not discussed a lot about the position with them. That's something that would make a working individual especially, but anybody probably, uncomfortable. Make sure that that's not going to happen. Ask them questions about their process. Whenever a position becomes available in your company, how do you go about getting in touch with me about that job? What information are you going to share with me? What would be the next step after that? Will you wait for my approval before you send that information to that company if I want to do some research first? Questions like those would be good ones for them to cover.
So at specialized staffing, how do you handle that with resumes? And do you send them, do you not? Do you get permission first?
No, we always get permission, yeah. A candidate's resume is never going to go anywhere where they've not approved it to go first. So in working with our candidates, there is a degree of confidentiality between us and the candidates. So we're able to share the names of our companies with them, our clients' companies with them. And if they haven't heard of the organization, they can take a little time to go and look out and determine, is that a company I'm really interested in? You know, look at some research that they would like to do on their end before they give us the go-ahead to say, hey, yes, send my resume, or you know what, no. And here are some of the reasons why I'm not interested, which helps us get to learn and hone in more on what they are looking for by giving us that feedback.
How about confidentiality within the community, we'll say? I mean, you're based right here in Butler. I know you reach beyond that, but let's just use Butler as an example. You know, if I'm here and I'm working with you and I'm in Butler, now I don't want my current employer to know that I'm looking because maybe I won't take a new job. I'm not sure. So talk about the confidentiality within the community, if you will.
Sure. So when we submit a resume to a client, we're not giving out any personal information for starters. So that company doesn't really know that person's name. They don't know where they live. They can't reach out to them directly from that resume being sent to them. In some cases where a candidate is super concerned about their confidentiality because it's a small world and people sometimes know each other, we have means of keeping those resumes even further confidential by not really putting the information about the company's names of where they've worked for or where they're currently working for. And instead, we're going to replace that information with a description of the industry that they are working in. If the client then has interest in them, we go back to the candidate, we talk about that, and we determine, you know, obviously you were interested enough to go to this step, so the next step would be revealing your information to that client and setting up an interview. And at that point, usually, they're much more comfortable in moving forward. The other part of that is all of our clients understand in working with us how important that confidentiality is. It would be highly unlikely for any client that we work with to endanger that current person's position in any way.
I don't think the companies would want that either.
No,
I mean, those that are hiring, they don't want to have that
absolutely.
situation either.
No.
And how about charging a fee? We talked about that, but again, if somebody's just joined us, just remind us that there's no charge for me as a candidate to work with you.
No, there absolutely is not. There's never a fee to our candidates in any way.
And if they call for a job, talk about that process next. Where do you go with the candidate next? I mean, you're kind of talking about, you know, do you go further with the interview? Do you take it into your hands at any point after they've done the interview? Do you see this all the way through them accepting this job?
So you're saying after they've interviewed with a client,
Yes.
correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We will continue to stay in touch with them. So after they've interviewed with a client, and there might be several phases of that interview, we will be continually talking to them after each interview to talk about what their thoughts are, how it went, what their interest level is, talk about any concerns that they might have so that hopefully we can get answers for them to calm those concerns if they have any, or rule the position out if it just ends up not being the right one. Once they accept an offer, which would be verbally presented to us, and in most situations we help negotiate that offer if need be for the candidate on their behalf, we would then stay in touch with them after they have started in that position. We want to make sure people are happy. And because of our relationships with our clients, if by chance, we never expect this to happen, but if by chance there is a concern once they've started in the position, we encourage our candidates to speak candidly to us. Sometimes we can either offer suggestions to them to help with that, or we can have a candid conversation with our client, again, falling back on that relationship that we have with them, so we can help them with those types of things.
So let's say I've come into you as a candidate and I think that I know what I want and you're pointing me down that path. What if you come across a job that we never discussed that may be a possibility for me? Would you throw that out at me, or how would that work?
I would. When I would first interview as a candidate, I would tell you that I try to be very open-minded. And sometimes I may reach out to you with a position that seems to fit what you're looking for, but maybe there are a couple of things that I wasn't sure of, and I ask for your permission. Is it okay if I reach out to you and talk to you about something a little bit off the cuff that maybe you didn't think would have been of interest to you, but I want to talk to you about it first before me rolling out on my own for you? So keeping in mind, though, those aren't going to be instances where the job is out of your salary range, is in a location you told me you weren't interested in, is the complete opposite type of work that you told me you'd have interest in. It's going to have some commonalities with all of those things for me to reach out to you.
But it's something that you would do, which is nice because, again, I may be tunnel visioned and where I think I want to go, and job opportunities may pop up.
Yeah, and the other thing behind that is, sometimes there are certain things in place with a company that I'm working for that are going to encourage me to reach out to you kind of on an environmental standpoint or from a benefit standpoint. So let's pretend that you told me that you would only look at positions paying X amount of dollars and above. And I'm working with a company that's right in your backyard. It's paying just slightly under, but they have a really, really strong benefit package where very little to no money is coming out of your pocket. You have bonus potential or incentive or profit sharing that is above average to most companies. I'm going to use my common sense and still call you about that because that might be very important to you to learn about that opportunity still, because in the end, it may compensate you even more than you thought it might.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't think about that. If we're driving an hour away from our house, how much time, gas, energy, maybe we have to go and buy our own food. But if we're in our own backyard, as you put it, quote unquote, we could maybe save some dollars and earn less annually.
Right, absolutely.
So Lisa Gardo, I almost called you Lisa Gardo. Lisa Gardo, Specialized Staffing, but Lisa's not here today. Joey Lurch is with us with Specialized Staffing, and you are based right here in Butler, but tell us about the reach that you have.
Sure. Our reach is within western Pennsylvania and northeastern Ohio. Those are the main territories that we work in. Every once in a blue moon, there is a client that we have that may be has another office in another location where, if we can, we will consider that we will assist them. But mainly, our clients are based here in western Pennsylvania and northeastern Ohio.
Which that is nice because what if we're not ready to move to Wyoming or Washington D.C. or wherever it may be, and we know that we're going to be in this general vicinity.
Right, absolutely. This is western Pennsylvania. A lot of people, if they leave, they come back. That is sort of the norm for this area. So we also work with a lot of individuals who have moved away, and now because maybe they've had children, or maybe their parents are aging, something like that, they want to come back to the area. So we also assist candidates like that. We also assist candidates who just are open to relocation based on the job and not based on where the position is located. So it really goes across the board on the candidate end in terms of people outside of our main area.
And maybe you can drive an hour to an hour and a half. Some people have done it. Some people do.
Right.
Some
people live in very remote areas.
Yeah.
And in order to keep their home where they like to have it, they are used to commutes like that. Or they're used to living in an area that maybe is a little more depressed. So they know, I have to drive this far and I'm not interested in relocating. So that's the norm for them.
And then some of us like to drive within 5 miles.
Yes, exactly. We like to coast to work with a cup of coffee in our hand. Absolutely.
Exactly. No stress in the morning, right? That's the key. That's the goal. So talk about a little bit about the website if you could. I know we can go online and search what we need, but talk about that.
So our website is Specialized Staffing Inc.com. And as a client, you can go on there and get a lot of information about our company and how to reach us. As a candidate, you can go on and you can look at all of the current opportunities that we have. You can even create a profile from our website and you can apply to certain positions that interest you. I always encourage people, most people that I speak with, even if they're working, they're keeping a general eye and ear open in the job market. So I always encourage people, it does not hurt you to keep an eye and ear open to what is out there. So go out and look, and if you ever see anything you're interested in, please let us know.
Let's get that contact information again.
Sure. It's Specialized Staffing Inc. Inc.com.
And I know there are places online, well, on your website that we can search the jobs that you have available. And are there specialties on your website that we can search, like qualifications and?
You can, yeah. In the current opportunities section, you're able to pick by industry. Let's say you're an engineer. Let's say you're in production management. Let's say you're an accounting person. You can select the industry by function that you want. You can select the function that you want, and you can search all of those jobs that fall within that category. You can also apply other parameters that I'm sure most people are used to, salary range and, things of that nature, distance from your home. So you can kind of narrow it down that way.
So would I be working with you if I need help with a resume or maybe interview skills?
Yes, the candidates that I work with, and especially when we get to the point of getting a resume in front of a client or interviewing with them, that's something that I absolutely spend time with them on. So after I've interviewed a candidate, if there are suggestions that I may have that, let's say they are applying for a particular position and there are certain requirements to that job, I may make a few suggestions for them to move things around on their resume so that it becomes clearer to a prospective client when they're looking at the resume from first glance that they meet those qualifications. When it gets to the interview process, prior to any candidate that I would send out, I'm going to have a conversation with them, and we're going to have a conversation about different types of interview questions that maybe they just find very difficult to answer. I'll give them some tips that are just general, really good tips for people to keep in mind when they're going into the interview. I'm going to advise them. Some of my clients, I think we all think, oh, I should always go to an interview in a suit. That isn't always true, actually, because sometimes you're interviewing with a manufacturing company and they intend to take you through their plant that day. If you didn't know that prior to going into the interview, you're going to be walking through their plant, in a suit and tie, and everybody else is going to be, in much more casual clothing, and you will feel a lot more comfortable if you go in dressed appropriately.
You'll get all the heads turned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He's not from here, is he?
Yeah, or all the people looking like, oh, we have a suit and tie in the house today. What are they here for? It makes them nervous. Yeah.
Keep them on their toes. Maybe that'd be an interesting day.
Right.
So you do a lot with coaching, and that's also a relief, I think, as a candidate, because if I'm going into a potential situation where I could possibly be an employee, I don't know what they're throwing at me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing is, again, going back to our relationships with our clients. If it's a company we've been working with for a while, we know the people that they're going to be interviewing with. We've spent time with them over the years and learning about who they are. We can tell them a little bit what to expect from those people, what their personalities are like a little bit. It makes the candidate more comfortable going in. Everybody's nervous when they go to an interview. That's completely natural. But the more information you have about what a company does, who you're going to be meeting with, what to expect, that is going to lessen that for you. And then that'll let you shine a little bit more in the interview.
Joey Lurch with Specialized Staffing, a recruiter, and you can get a hold of her, get a hold of Lisa Gard, the many great people who work with Specialized Staffing, based right here in Butler. They have a fabulous reach outside of this area with Western Pennsylvania and Northeast Ohio.
Yes.
And so plenty of businesses. And if you're a business and you want to call, I know I always try to get the candidates to come to you, but your businesses out there that want to get on board with this, maybe it's a good idea for you to do that as well. So Specialized Staffing in downtown Butler. Joey, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you, Tracy.
And folks, thanks again for joining us for this segment of Let's Talk. Of course, we'll be back again another day, and you can always join us online at InsideButlerCounty.com. For now, I'm Tracy Morgan with Let's Talk.